Hello, today is Wednesday, March 13th, 2019. I'm Joe Schmidt with TC2, and this is Staying Connected. Today's podcast is the final installment of our series, where my LB3 senior partner colleagues, Laura McDonald and Kevin DiLallo, discuss topics we wrote about in our paper, The 10 Things to Watch For in 2019. On this episode, we'll discuss the Internet of Things, 5G wireless, and SD-WAN. So let's get right to it. Kevin, the piece on 5G also ran as a standalone article in Network World, and we received some surprising feedback on the article, didn't we?
Yeah, we sure did. AT&T's PR rep complained that we weren't giving AT&T sufficient credit for rolling out 5G. Here's the deal, though. Just as it did with 4G, AT&T has once again jumped the gun and announced that it was deploying 5G. Well, actually, they call it 5G Plus in 12 cities and rolling out 5G-E in several more markets, all of which made Verizon, Sprint, and T-Mobile scream foul. They and many other industry observers claim that AT&T was merely rebranding a faster version of 4G as 5G and misleading the public about the technology. You might recall that AT&T did the same thing with 4G several years ago, and it received the same sort of criticism, but apparently it has a short memory. Let's be honest about what AT&T has really done. First, 5G-E isn't 5G at all, but instead is just faster 4G, also known as gigabit LTE. Second, while AT&T claims that 5G Plus can achieve speeds of 200 to 300 megabits per second, it says that the technology is delivered over millimeter wave spectrum, which is only one aspect of the 3GPP 5G new radio standard for true 5G. That standard also requires small cells, beamforming, and MIMO, all of which are missing from AT&T's own description of its 5G Plus service. So, in full-page ads in major cities' daily newspapers, Verizon Wireless challenged the industry to be more honest about 5G to avoid confusion and misleading the public. But despite its preaching, Verizon Wireless's own version of, quote, 5G isn't based on the 3GPP 5G new radio standard either. It's based on Verizon's own homegrown version of 5G, which it calls 5GTF. In the meantime, Sprint, the number 4 carrier, claims it was the first U.S. carrier to use real 5G technology, that is, really based on the 3GPP standard, in tests in San Diego this past January. So, as is often the case with wireless services, the only thing we do know is that we don't know much. Industry analysts predict that widespread commercial rollout of true 5G service won't happen until 2020.
So, Laura, 5G is obviously a big deal, and the fight for global 5G supremacy, it's really heating up, and it's really something that we need to watch.
Absolutely. The drama is not limited to the United States. There is a global battle for 5G leadership that's going on between primarily the U.S. and China. China's Huawei Technologies, that's one of the largest manufacturers of wireless devices, network infrastructure, and components. Huawei is aggressively seeking world dominance in 5G as both a standard setter and as an equipment provider, with a particular focus, obviously, on Asia, but also Africa and parts of Europe. However, here in the U.S. government has banned Huawei's products from government procurement, fearing that the Chinese government can use these products and services to spy on Americans. And it's urging U.S. carriers and entities and its allies to do the same. And in fact, Canada, Great Britain, and Germany are already on board with these concerns and have the same concerns. Just last week, though, Huawei struck back in another arena, filing a suit against the U.S., claiming that the 2019 National Defense Authorization Act, essentially what Congress passed to preclude the government from procuring services from Huawei, is a violation of due process. So we'll have to see what happens in that arena. Meanwhile, there is this battle about who's going to be first internationally. The Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, is actively taking steps to facilitate the rollout of 5G. And just last week, its chair tweeted something to the effect of, because of the FCC's forward-thinking policies, the U.S. is in the lead. And it cited a Cisco projection that North America will have 2 times the 5G connections as Asia in 2022, so just in a few years. However, many analysts really predict that China will be the first country to achieve large-scale 5G development, followed by South Korea, with the U.S. coming in third. Regardless, American wireless carriers and electronic manufacturers have to spend more on R&D and need more spectrum to be competitive. And we're talking really big numbers. Some experts report that the U.S. carriers plan right now to invest $275 billion in 5G, which could also boost the nation's GDP by $350 billion and create at least 3 million new jobs. So this is big stuff.
Joe, the takeaway of all this for enterprises in 2019 is caveat emptor. Don't rush out and replace all your old iPhone 8s or 10s or your Samsung Galaxies with new devices that promise 5G connectivity until the market works out what 5G really is and the industry works out the bugs. As exciting as the new technology promises to be, costs for early adopters will surely be much higher than those available later.
Okay, the next topic that we are going to discuss is the Internet of Things, which was also published as a standalone article in Network World. So, Laura, the Internet of Things, it isn't just about me being able to control my home thermostat, lights, coffee maker, and my music system from an app on my phone, is it?
No, although those are all pretty cool things. That's just part of the story. For enterprises last year, we are seeing expansive growth in the adoption of IoT, with companies harnessing the power of wireless data and really looking forward to the introduction of 5G for these purposes, for the collection of analytics, connectivity, all to enhance both their internal productivity and efficiency and the products that they provide, which are beyond our imagination of just a few years ago. Analysts expect corporate spending on IoT in the U.S. to also be in really big numbers. We're talking $200 billion in this year, in 2019, with global spending exceeding $800 billion in this year. So IoT presents enormous opportunities for development and also challenges. So as exciting as IoT is, as usual, the law is behind the technology. And as adoption has grown, privacy and security advocates have called for the regulation of IoT to enhance personal privacy and to strengthen the security of IoT devices and services. There have been several high-profile data breaches in the past years that were the result of hacks that used unsophisticated, unsecured IoT devices, such as nanny cams, to get into secure computer networks. And also, as the researchers have investigated these hacks, they've been able to hack into home computer networks using Wi-Fi connected smart IoT light bulbs, just as the gateway. So there's a lot of unknown here.
There is, Laura, but despite the hype and some hearings before Congress and the Federal Trade Commission, or FTC, no legislation or regulations have been adopted at the federal level to regulate IoT devices or services. 3 bills were introduced in Congress in 2017, but none of them ever became law. To the contrary, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have advocated taking a hands-off approach to the Internet of Things, pointing to the rapid growth of the Internet in the 90s as a benefit of government taking a laissez-faire attitude. In our view, that's a good thing, at least for now, because IoT holds so much promise for new innovation and economic activity, and premature regulation could hobble its development. Issues such as security vulnerabilities in unsophisticated sensor radio devices will undoubtedly be addressed by market forces. Purchasers will demand greater security and suppliers will respond accordingly. The FTC has said it's holding off on regulating IoT until some harm to consumers occurs. The FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, too, is keeping an eye on the market, but it has cited security issues as one concern it has with IoT. On the issue of security vulnerabilities, the Department of Homeland Security has issued security guidelines for IoT, but they're just guidelines. They are not binding. And NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology, has launched an IoT cybersecurity program and issued a report on international standardization efforts for IoT cybersecurity.
Joe, we talked about IoT in our predictions for last year, and one of the issues that remains the same and is important is that the producers and commercial customers have to resolve who's responsible, who's liable when there's harm as a result of an IoT device or transmission that fails or is compromised by a bad actor. Of course, nobody really wants that liability, but the current industry approach is for the providers of IoT equipment and wireless data services to shift that responsibility to the middleman. the entities, the enterprises such as healthcare, security, energy, transportation, and those who actually then sell the devices or the service to businesses or individual consumers. These middlemen, these enterprises have the direct relationship, but they neither develop, design the devices, and they're not the providers of the wireless data service. So they depend on the suppliers for reliable products and services. In our view, as representatives of many of those middleman businesses, the underlying equipment providers, manufacturers, and service providers are the ones in control, and they need to assume more responsibility to the end user for performance failures. As the market matures, suppliers and users will eventually resolve this issue, although almost certainly will come at increased cost for IoT devices and wireless services.
Joe, the takeaway is that companies who purchase IoT devices either for internal operations or for resale to customers should proactively explore what additional security measures they should implement, given the vulnerability of IoT devices interconnected with their networks. And companies that use IoT devices to collect personal information, such as health-related information or location information, need to be cognizant of their obligations under the GDPR and other privacy laws when they handle that information.
Okay, thanks for that, Kevin. The final piece we wrote about covered SD-WAN. Now, when enterprises develop their network strategies and their technical roadmaps for 2019, this is going to be one of the hot networking technologies that will be on the radar. SD-WAN, it's a significant transformational solution in the networking space and is also a major change from the MPLS status quo that so many of our clients have deployed.
That's absolutely right, Joe. Let's take a step back and look at what SD-WAN is in short. SD-WAN is an edge solution where software instances at all the connected sites create a virtual overlay network on the network transport underlay physical circuits. These on-site instances, which can run as virtual machines, are managed by centralized orchestrators. These orchestrators reduce the complexity at the edge and enable more rapid configuration and quicker stand-up of sites. And this is another really exciting area because SD-WAN, and one of the reasons that SD-WAN is really gaining traction so quickly with enterprises is that it's based on many established technologies that have been brought together in a much more accessible way. SD-WAN solution providers continue to enhance their product offering as take-up of SD-WAN by enterprises accelerates. So that's a really exciting development as well, and we'll see more in this area.
A major benefit of SD-WAN, Joe, is that the increased separation of the overlay and underlay networks provides an opportunity to use lower-cost circuits, particularly in place of MPLS. SD-WAN allows enterprises to reduce their dependence on expensive MPLS connections and replace them with internet transport, either dedicated internet access or business broadband, which can result in significant network transport cost reductions. SD-WAN offers all kinds of other benefits. For one, it provides better network alignment with business applications. It also offers enhanced performance through rapid failover, easier aggregation of available bandwidth, more effective tuning of policies and prioritization to applications' needs, and vastly improved network visibility and analytics.
All right, the takeaway that we want to leave you with is while this is all a great benefit and all these great solutions that are available from SD-WAN, but before you commit to an SD-WAN solution, you need to be sure to check your contractual obligations with your network service providers and your value-added resellers. So while the SD-WAN business case may show that you need less MPLS network transport, as Kevin just pointed out, and that you don't require expensive routers, you may still have revenue commitments tied to your legacy network, and that needs to be considered. Okay, that wraps up our podcast series on the 10 things to watch for in 2019. I want to thank both you guys for doing these last 4 podcasts. We'll be pushing the paper out to our clients, but if you don't receive a copy and would like one, or if you have other ICT needs you'd like to discuss, please give Laura, Kevin, me, or any of our LB3 and TC2 colleagues a call, or shoot us an email and we will sort you out. You can also stay up to date by checking out our websites or follow us on LinkedIn.